Ethan almost cancelled the blind date 3 times before finally locking the door of his small apartment and slipping his phone into his pocket. The mirror by the entrance reflected a man who looked older than his 34 years, tired eyes, faint lines of worry etched permanently across his forehead. He adjusted his jacket, one he only wore on special occasions, and let out a slow breath. From the living room, the soft glow of a night lamp revealed his daughter Lily asleep on the couch, her small chest rising and falling steadily as she hugged her worn-out stuffed rabbit. The babysitter whispered, "She fell asleep right after you read to her." "Thank you," Ethan replied quietly, lowering his voice instinctively. He knelt for a moment, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. Her fingers twitched slightly, as if she sensed him there even in sleep. For a split second, guilt tugged at him. He hated leaving her at night. Ever since his wife died, the world felt less stable whenever he wasn't within arm's reach of his daughter. But tonight was supposed to be different. Normal, just a blind date arranged by a coworker who insisted Ethan needed to start living again. The restaurant was farther downtown than Ethan usually went. Glass windows glowed warmly against the evening chill, and the faint sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifted out each time the door opened. Inside, the air smelled of fresh bread and spices. It was the kind of place Ethan had always considered too nice for someone like him, someone who counted every expense twice before spending. At the entrance, the hostess asked his name. "Ethan Miller," he said, clearing his throat. Her smile widened slightly. "Your table is ready." As he followed her through the softly lit dining area, his nerves twisted tighter with each step. He scanned the tables instinctively, half hoping to recognize no one. The last thing he needed was an awkward encounter with someone from work. Then the hostess stopped. Ethan's breath caught in his chest. Sitting at the corner table was a woman he knew all too well. Perfect posture, elegant black dress, calm, confident presence that seemed to command the space around her without effort. Sophia Hart, his boss. His mind scrambled, convinced this had to be some strange coincidence or cruel misunderstanding. He took an involuntary step back, but it was too late. Sophia looked up from her menu, her eyes widening just slightly. "Ethan," she said, standing up smoothly. For a moment, neither of them moved. The noise of the restaurant faded into the background as shock settled heavily between them. "Ms. Hart," Ethan blurted out before immediately correcting himself. "Sophia, I didn't know." "If I had known," she lifted a hand, composed but clearly surprised. "It's all right, I didn't know either." The hostess glanced between them, sensing the tension. "Shall I bring some water?" "Yes, thank you," Sophia replied politely. They sat down, the table suddenly feeling far too small. Ethan rested his hands on his lap, afraid they might shake if he placed them on the table. His mind raced through every professional boundary he might have unknowingly crossed just by showing up. Sophia studied him with an expression he had never seen at work, curious, human, unguarded. "Well," she said lightly, "I suppose this is what people mean when they say fate has a sense of humor." Ethan managed a weak smile. Or terrible timing. Despite himself, he noticed how different she seemed outside the office. At work, she was always impeccably controlled, her words sharp and efficient. Here, she looked softer, more real. They began with small talk, carefully avoiding anything too personal. The menu became a safe shield between them as they discussed food choices and exchanged polite comments about the restaurant. Ethan answered her questions respectfully, just as he always did in meetings, but the context made everything feel surreal. "You seem nervous," Sophia observed gently. Ethan let out a short breath. "I didn't expect my blind date to also sign my paychecks." That earned a small laugh from her. "Fair enough." As the conversation continued, something unexpected happened. The tension slowly eased. Sophia asked about his day, his commute, the neighborhood he lived in. Her tone wasn't that of a superior, it was genuine interest. When the food arrived, Ethan realized he was actually enjoying himself. He found himself smiling more easily, speaking more freely. Sophia listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions instead of checking her phone or steering the conversation back to herself. "What made you agree to a blind date?" she asked casually, cutting into her meal. Ethan hesitated. He usually avoided talking about his personal life at work, but this didn't feel like work. "Honestly," he said. "Honestly, my daughter," he replied. "She told me I shouldn't be alone forever." Sophia paused, her fork hovering midair. "You have a daughter?" "Yes, Lily. She's 6. There was a softness in Sophia's eyes that Ethan hadn't seen before. "That's very sweet. She's smarter than me," he said with a small chuckle. She thinks I need someone to smile with. Sophia smiled, but something subtle shifted in her expression. A shadow crossed her face, gone almost as quickly as it appeared. Ethan noticed. He tried to ignore the unease creeping into his chest, telling himself not to read too much into it. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to imagine that this night might simply be two people sharing a meal, no titles, no power imbalance, no invisible lines. But as Sophia set her fork down and folded her hands neatly on the table, Ethan felt the weight of reality settling back in. Her gaze held a seriousness that hadn't been there before. And deep down, Ethan knew that whatever came next would change everything. The night air felt colder than Ethan expected as they stepped outside the restaurant, the door closing softly behind them. The warm glow and gentle hum of conversation were replaced by the distant sounds of traffic and the occasional echo of footsteps on the sidewalk. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sophia stood with her hands clasped in front of her, staring at the city lights as if searching for the right words among them. Ethan shoved his hands into his jacket pockets, bracing himself. He had learned long ago how to recognize the silence before bad news. It was the same silence that had followed the doctor's pause years ago, the same silence that had come before life changed forever. Ethan, Sophia finally said, her voice quieter now, stripped of its corporate confidence. I need to be honest with you. His chest tightened, but he nodded. Okay. She turned to face him fully. Up close, he could see the faint tension around her eyes, the careful control she maintained even when emotions threatened to surface. Tonight was unexpected, she began. And I'm grateful you handled it with such grace. He forced a small smile. I didn't want to cause a scene. That's not what I mean, she said quickly. You're a good man. Anyone can see that. You're kind, responsible, devoted to your daughter. Those things matter more than people realize. Her words warmed him for a fleeting second, like sunlight breaking through clouds. But praise spoken with that much care rarely came without a reason. She inhaled slowly. But this can't go any further. The sentence landed like a quiet explosion. Ethan nodded once, absorbing the impact. Because you're my boss. That's part of it, she admitted. It would be inappropriate, unprofessional. He waited, sensing there was more. Sophia looked away, then back at him, as if forcing herself not to retreat behind polite excuses. But even if you worked somewhere else, the truth wouldn't change. His jaw tightened. What truth? Our lives are built on entirely different foundations, she said softly. My world is full of contracts, expectations, scrutiny. Every relationship I have is analyzed, questioned, used as leverage. I don't get the luxury of simple choices. Ethan's voice remained calm, but something inside him began to fracture. And you think I wouldn't fit into that world? I think you shouldn't have too, she replied. You have a child, a life that depends on stability, not chaos. Being close to me would invite complications you didn't ask for. He let out a breath that was half a laugh, half a sigh. So you've already decided what's best for me. Sophia flinched. That's not fair, isn't it? He asked quietly. You talk about protecting me, but it sounds a lot like you're protecting your world from someone like me. The words hung heavy between them. That's not what I meant, she said, but her voice wavered. I've seen what my life does to people. Friends disappear. Relationships turn into headlines or bargaining chips. I won't be responsible for dragging you and your daughter into that. Ethan stared at the pavement, blinking hard. He hadn't come here expecting promises or fairy tales. But he hadn't expected to feel this exposed either. I didn't come tonight because you're rich, he said after a moment. I didn't even know. I came because for once, I wanted to believe someone might see me without measuring my worth. Sophia's eyes glistened, but she stayed where she was. I do see you. Then why does it feel like you're saying I'm not enough? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No answer came. That silence hurt more than any harsh words could have. Ethan straightened, forcing his shoulders back. Years of responsibility had taught him how to stand even when his heart felt unsteady. I understand your decision, he said, though every word felt heavy. You live in a world of choices I'll never have. I get that. That's not. It's okay, he interrupted gently. You don't owe me anything. For a moment, it looked like Sophia might step closer, might reach out, might say something that would change the course of the night. Instead, she remained still, trapped by her own boundaries. I'm sorry, she whispered. Truly. Ethan nodded. Thank you for being honest. He turned and walked away before she could say anything else. Each step felt deliberate, controlled, even as his chest ached with every breath. He didn't look back. He knew if he did, he might not be able to keep going. The ride home passed in a blur. City lights streaked past the window, and conversations from the restaurant replayed in his mind, every glance and smile now tinged with finality. When he unlocked the apartment door, the familiar quiet wrapped around him. The babysitter whispered goodbye and left. Ethan stood alone for a moment, letting the stillness settle. In the living room, Lily lay curled under a blanket, her stuffed rabbit tucked beneath her chin. Ethan knelt beside her, brushing his fingers through her hair. The knot in his chest loosened just slightly. Her eyes fluttered open. "Daddy," she murmured. "I'm here," he said softly. "Did you meet your friend?" "Yes," he replied, choosing his words carefully. "Was she nice?" He smiled faintly. "She was." Lily yawned and snuggled deeper into the blanket. "I hope you weren't lonely." Ethan swallowed hard. He kissed her forehead, lingering there for a second longer than usual. "I wasn't," he said honestly. "Not tonight." As Lily drifted back to sleep, Ethan sat beside her, listening to her steady breathing. His heart still ached, but beneath the pain was something steadier, an understanding that rejection didn't define his worth, and love didn't always arrive in the shape people expected. Outside, the city continued on, indifferent and bright. Inside, a single father held on to quiet strength, knowing that even when hearts broke, life, and love in its truest form, went on.